Hello everyone. So in this video I will be covering papers, writing scientific papers, and a specific format called Council on Science Editors Format, or CSE format. So grading. So how do I grade papers? FYI, plagiarism, which is copying sources from the internet or from journal articles without attribution. Attribution means referencing them, or without paraphrasing them, is going to get an automatic 0 for the written assignment, whether that's a lab report, a research paper, a reflective paper, or any other papers assigned in a class that I teach. Okay, there are guidelines in your syllabus on what is considered plagiarism. I suggest that you read that. Okay, now obviously that guidelines on what is considered plagiarism is not an all-inclusive list. One of the things that is quite unique about scientific writing is in English, you can actually do what we call direct quotations, right? You basically can take pieces, sentences, paragraphs from work, and you can just put quotation marks on them, and then you can cite them. That is not the case for scientific papers. If you are going to cite a paragraph or a sentence from a scientific journal or on a website of some sort, you need to paraphrase it. Paraphrasing means you need to reword the actual thought of the paragraph or the sentence in your own words and still cite them. Okay, so that is a very, very important guideline for writing papers in any of the classes that I teach. Plagiarized papers automatically gets a grade of 0. FYI, for your information, all of your work which is submitted through Blackboard actually gets a reference to all written work out in the internet through a program called Turnitin. So be very, very, very careful, okay? Because if you do copy paste stuff from the internet, okay, Turnitin will find it. And again, you don't want to get a grade of 0. Okay, so that's a very important. That's actually the least of your worries. Getting a grade of 0 is actually the least of your worries in this case. Now, how do I grade papers? Besides plagiarism, obviously, there are guidelines written per section. So there are guidelines for all of your papers, and I grade by omission. What that means to say is I normally have a list of expected things included in a section. So anytime you miss one of those lists, okay, one of those requirements, that means you're going to get 1 point deduction. Let's say one of the requirements is I want you to present trends in the future about this subject, or I want you to give me 3 references in this section. Okay, so if you don't give me future trends, obviously that's going to give you a 1 point deduction. If you give me 2 references instead of 3 references, that's going to get you another 1 point deduction. Okay, so that is how I grade papers. I grade by omission. Now, in terms of style, okay, I know for a fact that this is not an English writing. This is not an English course, but this is a science course, so you do need to write in science. I do allow you some leeway on like spelling and grammatical errors. Okay, let's say the maximum in the guideline it says you're allowed to have 7 spelling and grammatical errors. Okay, so if any other two errors, let's say you get 9 errors which exceeds the 7 allowable errors, the 2 errors is going to get you a 1 point deduction. If you get, all right, so if you get 11 errors, that's 4 errors past the 7 allowed, that's going to give you a 2 point deduction. Okay, now please do not write your papers the day before or 2 hours before the deadline. Good papers require a lot of revision. The tool, and anytime that you write, I suggest that you should always revise your paper at least 3 times, and you should always give it to someone else to actually look through. Okay, very, very important. The other thing that I find important when I'm writing papers, because I wrote papers, okay, I still write papers, is you need to sometimes you need to read it out loud. What happens when you read it out loud, there's going to be some sentences that just doesn't make sense when you're trying to say it to someone else. Okay, so that's one surefire way for you to figure out if you're kind of off the track when trying to present a case or trying to present, in this case, a viewpoint of some sort. Okay, so that's how I grade. Now let's go on to CSE format. So CSE, again, as I mentioned before, stands for the Council on Science Editors. It's used for all works. Anytime you write a work and you need to, it's in science, this is the format that everyone uses. It's quite distinct from AP or MLA, which you're probably familiar of. However, it's kind of like a kissing cousin of the APA format. Okay. There are two in-text styles. There's called the citation sequence. That is actually, you will see numbers in parentheses after, in this case, after like passages in a paper, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's called citation sequence. In some cases, you'll see a last name followed by year, right? Fernandez, 2020. Okay. Ritger, 2018. Stuff like that. That's called the citation name sequence, okay, or the citation name format. For our purposes, so that it's just going to be simple for us, we are going to be using the citation name like format. Okay. Now, allowed sources. A lot of you will go off on Google or whatever is your search engine of of choice, and you're gonna pick the first thing out like the search basically returns to you, and you are going to cite that. No. Okay, there's only two ways to allowed sources here. They have to be from scientific journals. Okay, and the best way for you to figure that it's a scientific journal is you can access it through PubMed or through our library page. So if you go to our library site and go LTC website and go to EBSCO, which is the host, okay, you can actually find journal articles there. And by the way, People Magazine, okay, Us Weekly, those are not journal. Okay, when we talk about scientific journals, those definitely are not scientific journals. Okay, websites. I will allow websites. However, they have to be from governmental agencies. So the domain has to end in .gov. It could be a state entity. It could be a city entity. It could be a federal entity. It could be an international entity like the United Nations. Okay, that's good. Or it could be from educational institutions. And it doesn't have to be an American institution. It just has to be an educational institution somewhere in the world. Okay, so the domain for that normally ends in edu. Okay, so again, please don't cite People Magazine, don't cite Dr. Ruth, Dear Abby, okay, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, even though there's a journal in its name, don't, please, just stay away from those things. All right. So here is an example of a journal article. So I got this from PubMed. So this is about this whole mess, okay, of stuff, okay. So it's basically respiratory problems for coal miners, former and current coal miners. So in text, so if I'm trying to like cite this, I'm trying to like present this as an evidence of some viewpoint that I'm trying to present like to my instructor, let's say, what I'll do is, for our technique, this is called in-text citation, is I will paraphrase this whole passage. All of this passage basically can be boiled down to one sentence. Older coal miners have shown a higher prevalence or a higher rate of lung problems compared to current miners. Okay? Then at the end, what you do is you put a parenthesis. You actually put the first author's last name, Halden, et al. The only time that you use et al. Is if you have more than two authors. Et al. Is actually Latin for and others. So Halden and others, and then the year of publication. How do you know the year of publication? It's right up here, 2015. So that's in text. That's in the paragraphs of your paper. So that's in the beginning. And at the end, you obviously need to have a reference page. You need to list all the authors at the end. Halden, again, C.N. Wolf, Laney, the title, okay, of the actual article, the journal, and the journal is always, there's always the accepted abbreviation, American Journal of Public Health, all right. In this case, volume and edition 105-12, and then the pages, which is 2576 to 2577. So that's how you cite a journal article. Citing allowed website. So again, I search EIA.gov. EIA is the Energy Information Administration. It's a gov, so again, that's an allowed domain. And I just Google how much gasoline does the United States consume. Again, you need to paraphrase, okay? And I probably need to make sure that you guys can see this. And what happens is the U.S. consumed almost 3.5 billion barrels of gasoline in 2018. And in the parenthesis, instead of an author, you need to write the organization, which is EIA. And then obviously the year again, which is 2019. In the bibliography or the reference page, you need to list the organization alphabetically. So you go, how much gasoline does the US consume? The medium is internet. The place of publication is Washington, D.C. And again, Energy Information Administration, the country. Sometimes it'll tell you the actual date that the actual web page has been updated. So you have to write down updated on September 4th, 2019, and the date that you're going to be citing the actual article, cited January 13th, 2020, which is today. And then you need to provide the URL, which is all of these things. Okay? So I hope that that is gonna help you write your papers for the science courses that you're taking. For further guidance, okay, there's actually 3 hyperlinks that is provided in this video. All right, so you can visit those and you can actually try to use those to cite the sources that you have. Okay, the other thing obviously is me. If you happen to have any questions about citing stuff, all right, when in doubt, please feel free to send me an email. All right, so again, don't copy stuff. All right, don't just copy paste chunks of stuff from the internet. All right, big no. Make sure that you do revisions and make sure you do the CSE format. And I'll always, anytime that you write a paper, you should always look at the guidelines or a rubric if those are present. If you have neither one of those, you're in trouble. All papers should always have a rubric and a guideline. All right? Good luck, and I hope that this will help you do your papers in amazing fashion.